patience. We're having a few technical issues, but fortunately those have been figured out, so we're just sort of setting up for our talk today. In the meantime, I'm just going to run through some opening rules for the auditorium. So my name is Bridget Golombesky. I'm the Young Adult Librarian here at Northbrook, and we're really pleased to be partnering again with the Youth Commission for the second in this series on teenage wellness, and this one is about teenage mindfulness, so it should be really good. Because we're in our beautiful auditorium, I get to read the beautiful auditorium guidelines that come with it. So thank you all for coming to today's program. A few house rules help us keep our auditorium clean and enjoy all food and drink in the cafe areas. Please be courteous and silence your cell phones before the program begins. In event of emergency, there are 2 additional exits from the one that you came in. There is here on stage left, and up there on the second level. Those are just emergency exits, so don't use them when you're leaving today unless we're leaving for an emergency. Any questions about accessibility for library programs, for any accommodations, please contact our administration 72 hours before the program so we can have seamless access. After today's program, you can tell us what you thought by filling out a program survey. And you can always show your support for the library by purchasing a custom recognition plaque for an auditorium chair in a Make Our Mark, Name a Seat Northbrook Library Foundation sponsorship program. Those are like the little silver things on your armrests that you might notice. In order to provide you a better experience, we recommend that you reserve a spot if you're coming to an auditorium program. Obviously, we all fit in here today, but for other larger things like the Oscar movies, it's always a good idea to sign up ahead of time. And those are our auditorium guidelines. So before I hand it over to Carla, I just wanted to plug a few things that the library is doing. I know we've got teens and people who know teens here today. If you're planning on being a summer volunteer at the library, we would love to have you. You do have to attend an orientation meeting, which are in April, so that's happening now. So if you want to volunteer this summer at the library, make sure to plan on coming to one of those meetings. They're on Thursday, April 18th, and Saturday, April 27th. There's little handouts in the lobby for that as well. 2 other things to just plug in really quick. We are having our first ever Northbrook Teen Zine. The deadline to submit your writing for that is tomorrow, actually. And the winner of the best piece will get a $50 Amazon gift card. So if you're a writer, if you've written something for school, you're like, hey, I want this to be in the zine. I want money. Feel free to submit your piece. And the last thing, this applies to everyone. This year, Northbrook is doing our first ever community read. So in July, we're having One Book, One Northbrook, and we'll be reading Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. So there'll be a bunch of programs associated with that, but just giving you the heads up now, if you want to start reading the book, putting it on hold for yourself, that's what we're going to be doing this summer. So again, thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it off to Carla now to introduce us.
Thanks, Bridget. Thank you all for being here. I know I'm the chair of the Northbrook Youth Commission, and I know many people that wanted to be here that love this topic, that are all over the country in different places because they're all so busy doing things, which is sort of, in one way, indirectly what this is about. We're all so busy, everybody has so much going on. So the fact that you're here today is really appreciative, and we are so grateful for our panelists for being here. The students of our Youth Commission, a couple of them are going to detail a little bit more about our panelists and what we're doing today. I'm just going to quickly say that the Youth Commission was revamped about 2-3 years ago because we were kind of doing general volunteer work, and Sandy Froome, our village manager or village president, said, I don't like what you're doing, or it's repetitive. Many other groups are already doing that. If you want to stay a youth commission, we want you to evolve into something else. So we spent a whole year trying to figure out what to be, and it was only after we looked at possibly just making the youth commission go away. Like, maybe there's no purpose anymore. And it was really our students who said, no, we want a purpose. And we think what we want, and what eventually became our mission, we want a voice. We want to be able to sort of, outside of school, where school is about performing, and academically achieving and such. We want a voice to talk about things that are important to us. And so our mission is to elevate, encourage, and amplify the voices of Northbrook youth for the betterment of our community. And this will be our 5th forum. We started, our first one was on civility back in 2016 at the height of the presidential election when civility seemed to be a hard thing to find, and I think we're still struggling a little bit there. But we did a forum on civility. We did one on stress and youth, and we had 3 students get up on the stage and share stories, personal stories about the stresses they went through, and then we had a therapist help us figure out some strategies. And we did one on the social media and digital personas and students and the life they manage online, in addition to running their regular 3D life, and which was fascinating. We did that next door in the Pollock room, where we really did a workshop. And then recently we did an academic wellness as part 1 of 3 parts on wellness. And we talked with teachers from different schools about how do we make our academic settings feel a little bit more well. So today we're focusing on strategies, in a sense, mindfulness meditation, on how to manage stress better, that we all are constantly facing. So I thank you so much for being there. If you have any interest in learning more about the Youth Commission, we are 7 adults and about 15 to 20 students. We are always looking for new people to join us or sit with us even. We meet every 3rd Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock next door at the Village Hall. And without further ado, I will hand it off to Adam, who will tell you a little bit more about today's program. Sammy. Oh, Sammy's next, sorry.
Alright, hi, I'm Sammy. I'm a senior at GPN. So, why mindfulness? Recently, or as of last year, we did a forum about stress and how there's a lot of stress in the community, especially for teens, because everybody's got this competitive persona that they need to be the best of the best. And you really need to be mindful of what's going on in the world around you and kind of take a moment to be yourself. So this is our 2nd part of our wellness series. We did one about school and how to have academic wellness, and this time we're talking about how to be mindful for yourself and just take time to be who you are. So our 3rd segment is going to be about relationships, and that's going to be on the Saturday before Mother's Day, May 11th, from 2 to 4, next door in the Pollock room. And we're going to have the speaker, Donna Baptiste from Northwestern, come in, and she's going to talk to us about how to manage your relationships and kind of what relationships are. So, right. And then I think Adam is going to be talking next.
Hello. So today we are very grateful to have our 4 experts who have found creative and unique ways to incorporate mindfulness into their professional careers. They are GBN physical education teacher, Justin Weiner, mindfulness teacher from Fusion Academy, Paula Mayfield, founder and owner of Open Studio Meditation, Ella McGran, and therapist from Youth Services of Glenview and Northbrook, Becky Pollock. Who should I hand the mic to?
Before we dive into that, quick tech thing. Do you have the drive that it's on? No. Thank you.
Why did you join the Youth Commission?
I joined the Youth Commission because I was inspired from previous, from other generations of the Youth Commission, to join, and I've had a lot of fun, and I feel really good being a part of the Youth Commission. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I'm just so thankful to be here to share what I know about mindfulness with you. It is a life changer. It slows you down. It helps you enjoy life even more than you do now. It promotes your health and well-being in so many ways. So, how do we know it's good? There's a lot. I'm not used to a microphone. But okay. There's a lot going on to prove why mindfulness is beneficial. tons of research. You can even buy an Apple Watch and find mindful breathing on the Apple Watch. Not that I'm recommending Apple, but anyway, it's all over. And it's so good for us in so many ways, and you're going to learn that hopefully through all of us today. How wonderful mindfulness is. There's some confusion though, but there's meditation, there's mindful meditation, and then there's mindfulness. So what's what? Meditation actually began eons ago, at least 5,000 years ago, with yogis who would stretch and strengthen their bodies so they could sit in meditation for hours just to understand what life is all about. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have encyclopedias, which are outdated now, to understand what's going on within ourselves, within our world. So these yogis would just sit there and meditate, and inspirations and insights would come to them. Well, the interesting thing is, 5,000 years later, the medical community, schools, corporations are saying, there's something to what these yogis knew eons ago. And it's because it's so beneficial to all that we need to do to keep ourselves healthy. So, meditation evolved into mindful meditation. It's just being focused on your breath, on a chant, on a counting system, on a word, on movement. There's multiple ways of getting to the same goal of meditation or mindfulness. There's many ways. The key for me, the thing that works best, I think, especially when I'm teaching my students, is the breath. The breath is always with us. It's our best friend. And when we rely on the breath, that brings us into the present moment. It takes us away from our cares and concerns. And it helps us understand really who and what we are. And once we have that awareness, we know what to do. Our body can say, okay, I've been sitting in this position too long, I'm starting to feel stiff, oh my goodness, I need to move a little bit. Or it says, ooh, my fingers are really tight against the steering wheel as I'm driving into work. I better relax a little bit. So once we're aware, we can deal with life better. Also, we can expand our awareness, not only from our body, into the whole world. We can look out and see that beautiful sunset. We can look out and see, oh, there's little green sprouts coming out of the ground. It just expands all that we know about life. And it makes our life more meaningful. It makes our life more pleasurable. It just is a good thing. So I hope that helps you have some insight in what mindful meditation is. But mindfulness is basically all of that. Plus, it becomes a lifestyle. As soon as you wake up in the morning, you're aware, I'm awake. As soon as you go to sleep at night, you know, I'm ready for bed. It's an awareness of what is happening with yourself in the moment, within and without. So mindfulness, consider that as your lifestyle that you can choose to have, as opposed to be this fast-paced, I gotta get here, I gotta get there, and you have no idea how to connect mind and body, how to keep yourself connected. And when the mind and body are connected, you feel so much more in harmony with yourself, with life. So what I thought would be fun for us to do is to try some mindful breathing. To me, this is the key. This is the foundation to meditation, to find the benefits that mindfulness has to offer. So are you willing to try some with me? Okay, good. We're going to start with an experiment. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just check in and see what your internal landscape looks like. What does it feel like to be you right now? And then drop your mouth into a frown. Bring your tongue into the top of your mouth. Feel the teeth touching, maybe eyes squinching. And then how do you feel? Just notice. Now let out a big sigh from the mouth. Your eyes are still closed. Lift the corners of your mouth into a slight smile. Relax your jaw so the teeth are not touching, and let the tongue hang loose in your mouth. Let the eyelids gently float up. Now notice your internal landscape. Now notice how you feel. Try it again. Make a frown. Let out a sigh. Put a smile through your face. and release. What did you notice? Did you feel a difference between frowning and smiling? Why? There's a whole chemistry in our bodies. We're like a stew. So when we're frowning, the stew chemicals come out for cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, things that make us feel not so good. As soon as we lift our mouth into a smile, lift our eyebrows, it's like a tsunami. A whole new chemistry floods our body. These are what I call, it's an umbrella term for me, happy hormones. So you've got serotonin and dopamine and GABA and all kinds of other happy hormones and neurotransmitters and neuropeptides and endorphins flooding your body. It's just that fast. You frown, ooh. You smile, ah. Could you feel it? So mindfulness helps you develop a recipe for your chemistry. So you feel more positive, you feel more pleasant inside. You can live better with your body. You can be more open and aware of all that's going on. Does that make sense to you? Isn't that amazing? So when we feel anxious, when we feel maybe overwhelmed and depressed, think of it. You're flooding your body with a lot of chemistry that's putting you down. You can shift that chemistry by turning to your breath, putting a smile on your face. Be grateful, have a positive thought. Isn't that amazing? We have that in our control. So let's try some mindful breathing. Do you mind if I put this down? So again, this is another experiment. I want you to sit back in your chairs, feel your feet on the floor, feel the length of your spine. You might have your palms turning up on your lap. You may even like to have your palms on top of each other with thumbs touching, or whatever feels good for you. Your eyes are closed, your shoulders are released, your head is on top of your spine, the jaw's relaxed, the teeth are not touching, the tongue is loose in the mouth, and just notice how you feel. So on a rating scale from 1 to 10, give yourself a score. 1 being, oh, I don't feel so good. 10 being, oh, I really feel great. And let's see with some breath awareness if we can elevate that score for you. Just in a few moments. Let's see if that can happen. So, before we start, did you notice I just let out a sigh of relief? That's a way to reset your breath. So open your eyes. I should have said this first. To reset your breath. Typically, as we get older, we have more shallow chest breathing. We breathe up here, and as soon as we do that, the body reads that as, oh, I don't feel so good. I feel stressed. I don't feel safe in my body. As soon as we drop our breath down to the tummy, automatically the body feels safer. It feels calmer. It helps release anxiety and stress. Just that shift. So we're going to do a preparation for our breathing. So hands to the tummy. We're going to let out 3 sighs from the mouth. After the 3rd sigh, notice where you breathe. Okay? So eyes closed, jaw relaxed. Take a deep breath in the nose. Let out a big sigh from the mouth. Again, deep breath in. Let out a big sigh. One more time. Where did the next in-breath come from? How many see the tummy? Nobody? That's the way to reset. I see a few hands. That's the way to reset your breath, to drop it from here to here where you feel safer. So, and haven't you noticed that in yourself you let out a sigh? That's a good thing. That's a natural response that we have. So use it to your advantage. Let out 3 cleansing breaths, that's what we call it in yoga, 3 sighs from the mouth, and you'll automatically reset the breath to the tummy. So now let's do some breath awareness. So we're going to return to noticing our body with our feet on the floor, with our bottom sitting on the seat of the chair, our shoulders relaxed, our jaw relaxed, our teeth not touching, eyes are closed. Bring the hands to your tummy. Breathe easily in the nose, feel the tummy expand into your hands. As you breathe out of nose, feel the tummy draw towards your back. It's a very easy breath. Breathing in, breathing out. And just feel the movement of the breath against your hands as you breathe. And notice how wonderful it is just to be, just to breathe. Nothing to accomplish, nothing to do. Just breathe. And as you breathe out, you may notice your body getting a little heavier. You may actually increase the out breath a little bit longer than the in breath. You might notice that the mind even slows down of thinking. All you're doing is feeling the movement of breath against the hands. Now, bring the hands to the outside of your rib cage. As you breathe in, the tummy expands as the ribs open and expand again. As you breathe out, the rib bones draw inward, and the tummy draws towards your back. So feel the movement of the breath here in your rib cage. Notice as the ribs expand, the spaces between the rib bones increase. As you breathe out, those spaces get smaller. See if you can visualize that. When you bring visualization into this, it makes it even more centered in the body. Notice it almost feels like a massage. As you breathe in, the ribs expand, stretching muscle and skin. As you breathe out, the ribs draw inward and release. Only to breathe in again, feel that stretch. Breathe out, feel the release. Just take a moment. Now, deepen your breath. Go back to that story you gave yourself. Did it elevate? And without a big sigh from your mouth, open your eyes. How many of you had a higher score just from breathing? Wasn't that amazing? So we were shifting our chemistry just by doing that. And then how does that chemistry shift? Does anyone know? There's oxygen. We got more oxygen into our cells. And I often say that. Notice the oxygen being sent to every cell of the body to nourish those cells so they work more efficiently, more effectively, including the brain cells. So yes, oxygen. We got a lot more oxygen into our system, which is really good for us. The other thing is, just by breathing, we're activating what's called the vagus nerve. It's the biggest nerve in our body. It goes from our brain, and its vagus means wandering. So it comes across, this is why I say relax the jaw, comes down through here. It's like an upside down tree, into the heart, into the lungs, and into the gut. And the vagus nerve is what balances mind and body. Oftentimes in our society today, the sympathetic nervous system is the part that gets us up in bed out of bed in the morning, that gets us ready for a fight, gets our anger going, breaks those anxiety. That's elevated. A lot of us are up here. Our sympathetic nervous system is really overactive, and our calmness is down here. We want to bring ourselves into balance. We want to have the parasympathetic, which is the part that relaxes us and calms us, to take over a little bit more and reduce some of the stress. And that's what you were doing with your breathing. You were producing happier hormones, you were increasing vagal tone, is what they call it, which allows ourselves to increase the calm, increase the peacefulness, and reduce the stress. All you have to do is breathe. Isn't that amazing? That makes my heart so happy to know that I can do that for myself, because I get stressed, sometimes just driving into work. So keep that in mind. All you have to do is take it into your body, feel the breath here. And I have my students place their hands here. Sometimes we start with a 10-pound bag of sand, right? Or you can put a little stuffed animal on your tongue. But it's best with your eyes closed, and just feel the movement of the breath. It's going to be instantaneous. Once you start to become aware, and that's what mindfulness does, and that's what mindfulness is. So do I have time for another thing? No? Do I have time? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We're going to take a 2-minute mini vacation. And see if this makes you feel any better. So again, close your eyes, relax your jaw, and return to your breathing from the tummy, easy in the nose, long slow out. And pretend like you have a paintbrush in your hand, and there's a canvas in front of you. Take that paintbrush, and as you splash the colors across the paintbrush, picture your most favorite place to be, or a place you wish to go. And as you splash those colors, make it as vivid as possible. See the textures of this place. See the landscapes, the colors. If this place had a smell, what would it smell like? See if you can almost feel the smell tickle your nose. If this place had a taste, what would it taste like? Maybe you can feel the taste on your tongue. If this place had sounds, what sounds would you be hearing? And just take a moment and celebrate this place with all of your senses. Taste, touch, sound, all sight, all your senses. And then savor this moment. You know, this is a place to come to when you feel a little stressed. And let out a big sigh. Did anyone go to a vacation? Did anyone, in that brief 2 seconds, were you able to find yourself relaxing? That works very nicely. So anyway, one more thing. Another thing to do mindfully, when you go to bed at night, think of 3 good things about yourself or about your day. When you wake up in the morning, mindfully think of 3 good things you hope will happen during the day. The mind, when it thinks thoughts of gratitude, will produce that happy chemistry within your body. It's amazing. So we can use that as a tool as well to help us overcome a lot of issues that we're dealing with. So thank you for the time. And there's so much you can do with this. I wish I had more. Thank you.
So relaxed. I was a little tense. My presentation. Get myself ready here. So again, my name is Ellen McGran, and I teach meditation in a number of places. I'm going to talk today about the research. I just want to say a couple of things about what we just went through. So those are great meditations. And if you've never really meditated before, though, you might not have had too much effect from it. You might have found your mind wandering, or what you'll notice though is if you give mindfulness and meditation a chance. For example, that last one with the visualization, I use that in all the classes I teach. Sometimes it takes a little time. People can judge the quality of their visualization. It's amazing how the mind will get in the way. But once you learn how to do this, then you're building the neural networks that allow the process to really deliver the benefits. But hopefully a lot of you were able to feel just in those few moments. Breathing, I think, is probably one of the most accessible processes there is for meditation. All right, let me find the little... It's in my hand. I think I need to meditate more. So what I'm going to try to do is to cover some research and some data for you. And what I did was I went to this Pew Research Center study. It's fairly recent, end of 2018, because I wanted to make sure I knew, what's the data out there about teenagers? What are they concerned about? And interestingly, these are the top 4. So anxiety and depression, 96%. And the question was, of teens saying each of the following is whatever the 3 categories are, among people in their community. So not necessarily self-reporting, but what they're observing in their own community. So that's kind of a lot of people saying anxiety and depression, 96%. Bullying, I was actually, kind of amazed at some of these numbers, adding the 2 top categories, 90%. Drug addiction and alcohol. So these are teens across a very wide group of teenagers. And when I looked at that, I thought it was really interesting because meditation and mindfulness practices have been very heavily studied in terms of reducing anxiety and depression. I mean, I would say that in my experience of reviewing the data, especially for adults, because there is a lot more data for adults, but also for teenagers, it's like the number 1 impact of meditation practices is reducing anxiety and depression. And so, for example, that breathing meditation, I've seen research that says that just 3 20-minute practices of deep breathing a week is more effective than anxiety medication. And that I think was with adults. I can't say I've seen that with teenagers, but I wouldn't be surprised if we would see the same result. The other thing that I think is really interesting there is to look at bullying and look at the people who are doing that behavior. And I haven't seen any data on research with them to see if it reduces bullying, but it wouldn't surprise me if the kind of stress that leads to that behavior could be addressed through meditation. And then drug addiction and alcohol consumption are other ways of self-medicating for anxiety. So, there's I can see a lot of connection just in that top, first chart here. And I just put this one up because I think that, they looked at what is the kind of pressure that teenagers have today. There is quite a bit of pressure. Does this mic sound okay? Oh, okay, good. So, getting good grades, of course, looking good, fitting in, the extracurriculars, all that kind of thing. And then I didn't put the research in here, but I also wondered, okay, how much is stress and anxiety and this kind of pressure increasing? And there's a lot of data that shows that it is, over just even the last 10 years, seeing increases in that kind of stress and pressure. So I want to go into a couple of studies, especially one that I participated in here at Loyola Academy. And I'll go in a little more detail for this one and less for a few others, because this will kind of show you how the research is done. So the question there, and it was Rebecca Tiggs, who's a teacher there, wanted to look at how could meditation help students, girls in particular, improve self-esteem. That's a well-known issue as girls come into adolescence. There's a lot written about it. And so, could we raise self-esteem? And we had 48 girls over 2 studies, actually 25 in meditation, 23 in the control group. So I'll say a little bit more, but ages 14 to 18, we had pilot group and a larger study group. They were pretty much the same kind of process. We learned a little bit about logistics, and it was difficult because we had to do this between their regular schoolwork and all those activities, the extracurricular, the sports and everything. In every study, there's always a kind of measurement tool that gets used. So in this one, we were using the Rosenberg self-esteem scale 10-item questionnaire. I'll show you some of that. And then we did pre and post-test results. The practice is the one that I teach. It's I Rest Yoga Nidra. I do have a handout, so if you're interested in more details about that or any of the other kind of meditation we'll be talking about, or I'll be talking about, I think maybe you already got it when you came in, or there'll be some extra copies outside. It's a 35-minute guided meditation. We did it once a week for 7 weeks, and we had students do some journal writing, and we also discussed how it was going. So here are the results, and so just looking at the overall score on the self-esteem. Now this is a little tricky because this is, no, this one isn't, the next one I think is. So in the pilot group, we saw an 8% improvement in self-esteem. So that's, oops. Okay, we'll get this right. No, there's a little, oh, I shouldn't even try it. So there's this, okay. Maybe a little more deep breathing. So you can kind of see the pilot was a small group. The control also pretty small. We were just getting started. No change here. That's probably not, in the grand scheme of things, very significant. But then in the fall study where we had more students, and of course you can get better data, we saw an overall 17% improvement in self-esteem on the questionnaire versus, pretty much no change with the control group. The control group was just a group of girls who were getting together, to talk about things like self-esteem and improving, how they felt about themselves. I always love to see the verbatims, and I'll just share a few because these are pretty consistent, not only in our study, but in a lot of the other research that you would see. So, you notice that people start to experience differences. And I noticed when Paula was leading the meditation, she was asking us to kind of give ourselves a score before and after. And so part of really good meditation instruction is helping people to develop that self-awareness of how they're doing. But it kind of develops on its own when you start to meditate. It's an inner process. And you're starting to notice those inner feelings. And so just you can scan through here. I love the ones where I get a lot in my own practice. I'm actually teaching over at Walter Payton right now. People tell me this. Their family's like, I'm so glad you meditated. You're meditating today. People notice that they study more easily. I get a lot of comments about sleeping better, and then performance in sports. So these are pretty typical. And on the handout, and I'll mention it later. So now this is the tricky one. So this is percentage who disagree. So I'll just use this one. At times I think I'm no good at all. And only 27, well, let's call it 28% disagree with that. And it's just so terrible when you think about it, isn't it? That only 28% would disagree. With that, it's like I said, it's a little reversed from agreeing, disagreeing. But, what we saw was an improvement. So 71% disagreed with the statement at the end of the study. And so you really feel good about that when you see that kind of improvement. You wish it were 100. I mean, it's really kind of heartbreaking to think that people feel that way about themselves. For example, let me look at that. I wish I could have more respect for myself. That was a nice change. So this is just half of the survey, but if you look at the data, I mean, these are really important kind of issues around self-esteem, and it helps a lot to know, first of all, what's going on with the participants. But the other thing I think that's really interesting in these meditation studies is that the students kind of learn that they're not alone. They're not the only ones who are having these kind of thoughts. It's helpful, and that they can do something that improves it. They can meditate. So this is like a lot of words, but there's really 3 kind of bullet points there. There were a whole bunch of meta-analyses specifically on school meditation. So what I was surprised when I was getting ready to do this, I was really amazed to see how many studies have been done over just the last, say, 10 years. And you can see that these are all pretty recent meta-analyses, 2015, 16, 14. So there's a whole lot of activity going on right now in schools with research on meditation and mindfulness. So each one really showed that anywhere from small to moderate benefits along mental health, social emotional learning. And if you just kind of go through their stress, depression, anxiety, they even looked at things like heart rate and blood pressure. So you see a lot of studies now around eating disorders and other kinds of things that are going on. So they're just a wide swath of research. One thing that makes it all kind of complicated is there are so many different kinds of research that are offered and studied. And I just wanted to show you, so of course, focus and concentration, transcendental meditation, which is a mantra-based meditation, is getting a lot of research and acceptance in schools. The relaxation response we'll be hearing a little bit more about later today. Mindfulness meditation, loving kindness, which is that little short one, just thinking, loving kindly towards yourself is a beautiful meditation. Yoga Nidra, I rest, which is what I teach. And so it's a little complex because loving kindness sort of includes focus. Yoga Nidra includes mindfulness, focus, and loving kindness. So each of them, you could probably draw a diagram that would show they overlap a lot. You have to choose your methodology whenever you do these studies. And again, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the key processes. So just to kind of break it down, these are the things that are getting looked at in the meditation studies. So sort of different cognition results in learning, focus, sustained attention, and then metacognition, which I give the definition here, and I think Paula was really, again, you start to notice how you're feeling. And, so people start to notice, especially the adults that I teach, they start getting angry, for example, if they're driving and things aren't going well or they're running late, and they're ready to, get all stressed out. And then they start to notice that, and they get a little distance from it, and they make a different choice. So a lot of what meditation is doing is giving us more choice between the actual, thing that's happening and our response to it. So instead of reacting, getting caught up in things, we're responding. The default mode network, I could probably spend an hour on that, but that's a new area of brain research that shows that we do have a kind of set of activity, a kind of brain state that when it gets out of control, it can lead to a lot of negative self-talk, that kind of ruminating. If I don't get that grade on this test, if I don't get that SAT score, then I won't do this. And it can lead us into just a huge amount of stress. Physical health, blood pressure, heart rate, sleep, vagus nerve regulation, which was mentioned. And then in the psychosocial outcomes in mental health, we see, again, reduced anxiety and depression, improved emotional self-regulation, and you can read that. And resilience is a big word and a big object of study with all populations, including teenagers. So I put the definition we use up there. So it's just that ability to overcome and be transformed by adversity. So meditation isn't about getting away from the adversities of life, but it's just learning how to have capacity to experience all the things that get thrown at us with a little bit more resilience. So let me just make sure I get through. There was just in terms of resilience and well-being, a really well-managed study at Cambridge, which you can find online. 155 boys, you can read it again. Really good results in the areas of resilience and well-being. So I want to talk a little bit about implementation. It's so important that it's evidence-based, that when you bring it into a school, you have clear objectives of what you're trying to do, usually about part of a larger well-being initiative. And making sure you have good trained instructors who themselves are practitioners. So just quickly, the one that I love the most is this Mindfulness in Schools project. It's a UK-based program that's going out to a lot of students in the UK. It's called, so the four programs they have are .B, which is Stop and Be for teenagers. They have a younger population one. They have an 8-week one for teachers. And that's, I just want to stop and say, one of the things I love about this and some of the other studies I've seen is they don't forget about the teachers. So teachers, really need to also, benefit from all of this. And then there's also a new 8-week online course, mostly for teachers. The students, 75% of them, and this is over 1,433 students, so they recommend it to a friend. I think that's pretty good. I'm sure they're trying to get that up, and you can see some of the areas where they saw improvement. Exams, being kind, sleep, coping with difficulty. This is all online. On the handout that I have for you, there's a website that shows all this data and more. And then the teachers also, were looked at the same data. 67 teachers here reporting, 100% saying they'd recommend it to a colleague. And, overall getting some pretty good benefits from it. And I just want to say a few things about what I think the trends are going to be in school implementation. I think we're going to see it more because there's a lot of evidence for it. There's a lot of research. There's quite a lot that people could take without even doing their own research to their school system to, implement this. I would like to see, I think a lot of people would, having these kind of thinking integrated into the school curriculum so that you're talking about it in other classes and in physical education, psychology, or science and biology classes. There's kind of a move to, making it more part of the values-based program, and this is really interesting. Richie Davison up at the Center for Healthy Brains has been doing some work at the grade school level. They just got a grant to do some high school work. And again, I have the website for that. And then, there should be a lot of different ways for students to get into meditating because there definitely are, yoga, tai chi, breath work, and then the mindfulness, the body sensing, and that kind of thing. There are all kinds of approaches. And some students may prefer others. Some build on others. I would always start students with a good reading practice. I was thinking we might have time for a little practice, but we're not going to. Anyway, I'm going to hand it over now.
I'm a PE teacher, which means I normally don't use a microphone. I'm assuming that all you can hear me at this point, but a few of my students are already in the audience. My name is Justin Weiner. I'm a PE teacher at Northbrook High School. I have a very unique perspective because I went to Northbrook North, grew up in this community, and now I'm back teaching at Northbrook North. And mindfulness is something that I didn't really start to look at until probably about 7 years ago. I was doing some research on just the Navy SEALs and Delta Force and certain ways that people who are under extreme stress deal with their lives. And one of the things that they have incorporated, especially in those elite programs, is mindfulness. And so, having the opportunity to be in a physical education curriculum, it's a very, very easy way to incorporate mindfulness into that curriculum. And that's one of the things that I've done this year with a lot of my junior and senior classes. I found that as freshmen and sophomores, it's very difficult to keep them still for quite some time. They like to be moving around a little bit more. But the juniors and seniors, as a lot of the research will show, your junior year of high school is a very, very high-stress year. You have a research paper. You're starting to look at colleges. You're starting to really think about your grades and how they have affected you in terms of the college process. And then seniors, where are you going to school? That is a very, very stressful process. And not only that, keeping those grades that the schools will need. So I just figured, in a physical education curriculum, I'm not necessarily just about the body. All right? I look more at a holistic approach to the way that we look at physical education and our curriculum. And it's something that a lot of teachers have done, as evident by the fact that we have now added yoga to our curriculum. Last year was kind of our pilot year in terms of what we thought about with yoga, and we had 1 or 2 sections. We've doubled that this year, and I expect it to grow exponentially over the next couple of years. And really, that's what we wanted, right? We wanted students, and as a baseball and football coach at Northbrook North, I actually like my athletes to take it, not necessarily always for the mindfulness piece, but as I was talking to these panelists earlier, because their hamstrings are so tight, and I don't want them to get injuries. But realistically, we look at how the students have already asked for more yoga. They want more of this. And so one of the things that I tried this year was on Thursdays and Fridays in my adult, I will call them my adult PE classes, my junior and senior PE classes, we'll do mindfulness for half of the class. Part of our curriculum in the PE program is we have our activity for half of the class, and then we have fitness. Well, fitness is very broad. You can define it as either physical activity or, as I would consider it, mindful activity. You want the ability to not only work on your body, but work on your mind. So once a week, or based on our block scheduling, it might be twice a week, we're going to work our physical bodies. And then that other day is going to be our mindful bodies. So the way it'll work is we'll go down to the wrestling gym. We're very fortunate in Northbrook North to have so many awesome facilities to use. And we have so many facilities at our disposal. And so what we'll do is we'll go down to the wrestling gym. Students will either lay on a yoga mat or they'll sitting up. And it's almost like it's their time to kind of check out from their stressful lives. And if you don't think that teenagers are stressed out, all you gotta do is think about Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and reality. Right? They have 4 separate personas. Sometimes they have multiple Instagram accounts. I learned a new term the other day, a Finsta, a fake Instagram account. So not only are they creating a fake persona, they're creating a real persona, they're creating another persona that they live in real life. So managing 3 separate people over the course of one day, that sounds extremely daunting and darn near impossible. So to give them that opportunity once a week, maybe twice a week if they're lucky, I kind of consider it a privilege. If they don't participate and don't work throughout the course of the week, they don't normally get meditation. However, in the course of 2 semesters now, or I guess semester and a half, that's happened 0 times because they look forward to the meditation. They want that time to really think about the way that they think and to get that relaxation time. Sometimes that's a nap for them. They may not even participate in meditation. They might need 20 minutes of shut-eye because they were up until 2:30 in the morning working on some research paper or working on multiple research papers. So when you think about the lives of students, and again, as a Glenbrook North student, I went through a lot of those stressors, but I also didn't have the immediacy of gratification. I didn't have that iPhone in my hand. I had a gigantic block Nokia that I was playing Snake on in math class, and that's the reality, right? I can get anything I want right now, the weather forecast, the news, what did my cousin do last weekend? Everything that I need, I can get in the palm of my hand. As great as that is, it causes serious problems because you're constantly, it's the FOMO, as the students call it, the fear of missing out. What did I miss by not being at this party? What did I miss by not being at this event? So to give them the opportunity to check out for a little bit is extremely gratifying for them. And a few students in the audience have been in my class and have experienced the benefits of it and have told me about the benefits of it. I talked about freshmen and sophomores. We've actually started to push toward sophomore girls and freshman girls classes for even 5 to 6 minutes of meditation. Breathing, 5 minutes of breathing, and the ability, as Paula said, to have an Apple Watch, and again, I'm not endorsing Apple, but to have that breathing app. You can set it for 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and you can set your breathing rhythm. That's extremely beneficial. So even in our freshman girls, sophomore girls classes, we have started to implement that in the curriculum. and also in other courses. One of the things that they did for us as teachers is they put us through a mindful day in terms of teacher orientation. How do we incorporate this into our lives? Therefore, we can incorporate it into other lives, into the students' lives. And so, one of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically from the juniors, senior standpoint is their reactions to it. I've heard people liking it before our activities, so we go straight into meditation, then go into pickleball or badminton or basketball. I've also heard from students that like it after activity. Now the thing with after activity is if your heart rate's here, it has to come back down, right? And that's how we talk about the breathing techniques, checking in, making sure you can reduce your heart rate and blood pressure by breathing. That's one of the things that we'll do, and hopefully I'll have time to drag you through a progressive muscle relaxation technique that we use when we've had activity followed by meditation. One of the verbatims that we heard the other day was, I prefer it after, right before, and this is my 8-9 class, so it's the last 90 minutes before the end of the school day. I prefer it right then because it gives me a boost for the rest of my evening. Right? And what's that boost for? That might be for athletics, that might be for activities, that might just be for homework. And realistically, that boost, that 20-minute nap, or 20-minute mindful alpha state of being is very beneficial for metacognition. It's very beneficial for your actual cognition, being able to retain specific information that you may be studying, whether that be for a test the next day, writing a paper. It really doesn't matter. It's kind of guided through whatever the individual has, the stresses that they have during that day. In terms of the reactions as well, some of them go, I really like nap time. And I said, well, it's not always nap time, but I'm not upset if they're napping, because when I do meditation, and I meditate probably once or potentially twice a day, whether that be 5 minutes during my lunch break, just to give myself some time, because believe it or not, when you teach a full day and then have to go coach another sport, it's very stressful, and you're working 14-hour days, so you need time to check in, and if you don't, it starts to cycle. And then there's self-medication, there's doctor-issued medication. The best medication that I found is meditation. So even 5 minutes of breathing through the watch or through the Calm app. And that's one of the things that I'll talk about here in a bit. But when they talk about nap time, there is scientific evidence of 20 to 30 minutes of a nap allowing you to be more productive later on in the day. They kind of make the cutoff at about 60 minutes, because once you get past 60 minutes, then you get more into your deep sleep. So any naps between 20 and 60 minutes are beneficial for your cognition, beneficial for your thinking. So again, whether they're meditating with me through the Calm app, that's either a guided practice or something that I will walk them through, or whether they're sleeping, doesn't really matter to me as long as they're checking out of their stressful lives. And there are some teachers that are kind of buying into it, some that are a little bit more, I'm not sure if I feel like this is what I really want to do. And again, it's kind of, I took a leap of faith hoping that it would work, and it in effect has worked a little bit. But one of the things I just mentioned was the Calm app. It's a free app on your phone, and what they have done is they've partnered with K through 12 teachers. We get the premium content for free, which I think is tremendously helpful for us as teachers who may not have the official training to walk someone through a mindful technique. I've done a lot of research. I don't have any certifications that would allow me to be a certified mindful professor. That being said, there are people within the app that have. And so unlocking that content, the daily calm as they call it, or the artist and composer Moby, he has his new album exclusively on Calm. And a lot of it's just ways to help you sleep or meditate or do a variety of things in terms of allowing yourself to check out. So in effect, that app has helped us guide, or help myself and a few of the other teachers guide our students into this meditation process. And although resistant at first, there's a few that have now really told me how beneficial it is and how they've done it outside of my class. So that's kind of what I wanted to walk you guys through, is what we would do in a situation where we were high activity, and again, I know you guys have been sitting here for a few minutes, and so it's not necessarily going to be as beneficial, but I hope that you still find the benefit of this progressive muscle relaxation technique. And what we're going to do is essentially, you're going to sit in your chair. Because you guys have armrests, you're going to have your arms set here. Okay? And the biggest thing during this activity is you're pairing breath to movement. Okay? When we talk to a lot of our athletes about pairing breath to movement, when we do specific exercises, our concentric phase is always our inhale. Our eccentric phase is always our exhale. So if I'm doing, let's say, a bench press, as I'm pushing up, I'm exhaling. As I'm coming down, I'm inhaling. Okay? And that pairs your actual breath and your body to work in the most effective manner. So when we go through this, I'll cue you through it as well. But if I'm asking you to squeeze your toes, as you squeeze your toes together for a 1 or 2 breath count, you're going to inhale during that time, and as you release that tension, you're going to exhale. Okay, so normally the cue will be squeeze, inhale, release, exhale. Okay, and we will do, depending on the time in my classes, sometimes we'll do 3, 4, 5 squeezes, 5 tension releases per body part. Sometimes we'll do less depending on the time that we have. This is something that we've implemented with athletes as well. There was a former professor of psychology, Ken Ravizza, who has worked with the San Diego Padres. He's worked with the Chicago Cubs, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. He's worked with a lot of organizations. He has since passed, but he talked about breathing and the techniques that you can use specifically with sport and in activity. So I'm going to have you guys close your eyes, sit up straight, and first check in with your breathing. You don't need to breathe deeply. You can breathe at your normal rate for the time being, and then when we go through this technique, I'm going to walk you through specific body parts. And we always try to start from the ground up, because that's essentially where we are throughout the day. We are always ground up. Our feet are always grounded. And so now, we're going to start with our toes. So as you squeeze your toes, you're going to inhale for a count of 3. So squeeze, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3. One more. Squeeze, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3. One more time. Squeeze, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3. Keeping your eyes closed, we're now going to move our way up the leg. So a lot of tension can be harbored in spots in our legs that we don't really recognize. One of those main spots is your Achilles, your calves. So we are going to pull our toes up toward our knee. Control your breathing and inhale and squeeze. And exhale and release. Inhale and squeeze. Exhale and release. Inhale and squeeze. Exhale and release. And now we'll once again focus on your breathing. During the time of your breathing, as Paula talked about, we want to use diaphragmic breathing. So that's getting the air down into your lower portion of your lungs, into your diaphragm. And for time, we're going to move our way up the body. So now we'll go into our abdominals. This is one of the more difficult ones sitting up, but what you're going to do is try to clench your abdominals together and then release it. When you do this, you should feel your pelvis tilt a little bit. And so we go through our breathing, and we inhale and squeeze. 2, 3, exhale. 2, 3, inhale. 2, 3, exhale. 2, 3. Last one, inhale. 2, 3, and exhale. 2, 3. And the last one we will do is with your arms on your armrests, you're going to squeeze that armrest with your hands. If you don't have an armrest, you can just squeeze your fists together. And inhale. 2, 3, exhale. 2, 3. Inhale. 2, 3, exhale. 2 and 3. Last one, inhale. 2, breathe, exhale, 2, 3. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and simply understand that your body, whether you feel it or not, is already at a more relaxed state. One of the things that we'll do after that normally is we go into box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. It's called a bunch of different terms, but you control your breathing to a point of 4 seconds. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds. And the example I always give the students is, if you are a Marine sniper, a Navy SEAL sniper, you're being shot at, how are you able to control your sympathetic response to that action or that situation? And they do it by breathing. If you ask any sniper or any military man, when they shoot in between heartbeats and between breaths. And they are so in tune with their bodies that they know when their heart's going to beat based on their breath. So they've connected everything, their movement to breath. So we'll always go through that. And although it takes a lot of practice in order to get to that point of being able to hold that breath in, students are now becoming more proficient at it throughout the semester. When we started first semester, some students weren't able to do it. By the end of the first semester, they were. And then the same thing going this semester. So that's just one of the ways that we've implemented it in the PE curriculum at Northbrook North. A lot of teachers, we have a brain studies class, we have psychology classes. They will incorporate mindfulness at the beginning of classes. And even in other classes such as math or English, they're taking mindful breaks. So whether that, the way our classes are structured with 45 minutes and 45 minutes, we've paired that into one 90-minute block. That's a long time to be working on one specific thing. So a lot of teachers have randomly started mindfulness breaks, whether that be after 30 minutes, 45, 50, 60, doesn't matter, but 5 minutes of just checking out of whatever we're working on and then moving back into whatever the curriculum is. So I really appreciate your time. That's just, again, one of the ways we're using it in the PE curriculum and in our curriculum at Northbrook North, and I see it more evolving as the years go on.
Hi everyone, I'm Becky Polygon, I'm a therapist over at Youth Services. I'm going to try really hard not to use a microphone as well, because I don't want to hold something. But if you cannot hear my voice, please let me know and I'll try and speak a little bit louder. So I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I've been in the field for about 7 years, and I've been working with both group and individuals in therapy since that time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the group therapy that I learned and how we use mindfulness, along with some of the individual therapy that I do. And then I would like to lead you through one last little meditation at the very end. First, the group therapy that I run is called dialectical behavioral therapy. Has anyone ever heard of DBT before? Right, so it's a type of therapy that just uses a lot of cognitive behavioral strategies, but it's packaged in a certain way that has just been really useful to help clients to help regulate their emotions a little bit more effectively. So it was created by Marsha Linehan in the 90s, and they use mindfulness and meditation. It's a big piece of DBT. And imagine how this could be helpful. So I run group therapy, and it's mostly for adolescents, so I have a lot of teenagers. So imagine being a teenager and walking into a new group situation. There might be a lot of anxiety happening, right? Because maybe you don't know anybody who's there, maybe you don't know what to expect, or maybe you're walking into a brand new place. Or imagine walking into a new situation after you just had an argument or a fight with like your parent, or maybe your significant other or a close friend, right? There's a lot of kind of anxiety or emotions that could be happening within the body. So we understand that in group therapy, and that's why we choose to use mindfulness as a way to calm and ground ourselves, right? So one of the first activities we do is a calming and grounding exercise. It's really just a way for us to a time to take to put away distractions, put away the things that we're thinking about, and choose to focus on one thing, like our breath, or maybe choosing a different kind of an anchor, just something to focus on, like sound. We've even used different types of anchors, one time we used this a ball of Play-Doh that was cinnamon scented and it was warm. And we used this as a way to kind of like pull the teens or the clients into the moment, just to kind of like increase their sense of smell, increase the feeling of the Play-Doh sitting in their hands. And then we also had them kind of notice the urge to squeeze the Play-Doh, but we directed them not to do it. And then wanted them to kind of notice the difference between like, you're having that urge, but you can't do it. Can you notice that about yourself? Mindfulness gives us a lot of grounding and calming. And it doesn't really matter what you choose to focus on. It's really just the act of taking time to kind of sit and to kind of slow down and to focus on something that is actually really beneficial. All these activities are created to pull the client into the present moment and try to have them just fully immersed in it. When we are grounded into the moment, the one thing that we're not doing oftentimes is thinking about that thing we're worried about tomorrow, or worried about, or like feeling sad about the thing that happened yesterday, right? So like that's what grounding and calming, that's what mindfulness can do for us in the moment. So being fully present in what's happening now, it just gives us a sense of calm. Another reason why we use mindfulness in the group session is because when there's a lot of emotion dysregulation, meaning you're having a lot of emotions kind of fluctuate quickly, right? So like when you're calm and happy 1 minute, and then all of a sudden you got triggered and you got really angry, and then all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, you're feeling kind of guilt or shame because maybe you yelled at somebody when you were angry, right? So a lot of fluctuating emotions. Or maybe you're just feeling sad and depressed for long periods of time, right? When there's a lot of that dysregulation, sometimes we're not always sure about what exactly triggers us, right? Sometimes like some things just kind of happen, and then we just respond to it. Right? So when you don't have a lot of that awareness, what mindfulness can do is it can help us just to kind of like, when we're checking in with ourselves, like everyone, the panelists have been saying, when we check in with ourselves and we're trying to understand like, what emotion is actually happening here? Where am I feeling it in my body? Right? That's what mindfulness exercise and practices can do for us. So we use mindfulness to bring a better understanding of what's going on in our mind and in our body. And this works in group sessions by having the participants try all these different activities, and we really use, because I work with a lot of teens, we use lots of different types of activities, using our different senses to kind of pull us into the moment and to become aware of ourselves, right? So it kind of doesn't matter what the activities are. We just want the teens or the clients to begin to notice what's going on inside your body, what's going on inside your head, like what are the emotions that you're feeling, instead of just kind of walking around with all of that happening all at once and just not really knowing what exactly is what, right? So that's a piece of why we use it in group therapy. I've also used mindfulness in my individual work with clients. I work with many different types of people who come to use services, a lot of middle school, a lot of high school, a lot of young adults and some adults. And they come in with lots of different diagnoses, like anxiety, a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety in this world, right? There's a lot of depression, right? But I have some clients who are struggling with bipolar disorder or even some social struggles. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how I've used mindfulness in my individual clients, with my individual clients. So I had one client who was struggling with some impulsive behavior and had a really hard time focusing. And so like would have to sit and do their homework, but then would just be distracted kind of constantly by everything else. And so what I was trying to do was help them to build awareness of when she got distracted versus just kind of sitting there and allowing her distractions to kind of take her away and like then she wasn't able to focus on her work at all. So the mindfulness was a way to build awareness and build a sense of the ability of just like, oh, I just got distracted by something. I just like, my mind just went off and I started thinking about like what I'm going to have for dinner later, right? So that all happens to us a lot. When it happens so often that you can't focus on like homework, or it's hard to focus at like your job, like that can be pretty impactful, right? So what I was trying to do is use mindfulness techniques to help this person focus back on whatever it is that what we were doing. Another client I was working with was struggling with panic attacks. So we used mindfulness training to help her become more aware of when the panic symptoms were actually happening. So I don't know if you understand this, like panic attacks don't typically just kind of like happen like that, although they often feel like it. There are sometimes the stresses that happen beforehand or the anxiety that's happening beforehand that can then make you vulnerable to a panic attack. And so what I was trying to do was help the client to identify what's happening before here. what are the stresses going on in your life? What are the thoughts going through your head that is going to lead you to this panic attack? Because we can do something about the stress. We can do something about some of the thoughts. We can do something about the tension in the body before we get to that escalated level of panic, right? So like when we're at that escalated level, you can do some grounding techniques. Sometimes it's a little hard then. So when you catch it beforehand, that's more helpful. So that's one thing that I try to do with that client. Another client I was working with was struggle. We do mindfulness and meditation because she's often getting caught up in anxious and shameful thoughts. She would kind of start thinking about all the things that she had done wrong in her life, and she would start down this spiral of how bad of a parent she is. Like, can't believe that she did this to her child. You know, a lot of things that, like, when you're sitting there and you're spiraling and you're just thinking about that kind of stuff and you're ruminating, it's not super helpful, right? It just kind of tends to make you feel worse. So what I would do with that client is I would stop our conversation. I would say, you know what, I think we're spiraling right now. I think we need to stop. I think we need to slow you down. I think we need to bring in a little bit of some mindful breathing or something to focus on to help them just slow their body down. Because when you slow the body down, oftentimes the mind will also slow down. Since we've actually been practicing these techniques, she's done this at home and has seen some success. So I'm pretty happy about that. One other mindfulness practice I love to use with clients is gratitude. So I know Paula had mentioned a little bit of that, and I'm so happy that you said that, because I think gratitude exercises are so useful and so important. These are basically exercises as a way to help clients focus on what's going well in their life, especially when they tend to focus a lot on the negative. I don't know if you ever, has anyone ever like had a friend or a parent or a relative who's just like kind of negative, right? Okay, so when you're always focusing like on the negative stuff, you know, sometimes it's hard to like focus on the positive, but then it also just really impacts you, right? You're out feeling negative all the time, and your mood is really low. So gratitude exercises are a way to help clients to like identify that, like, yes, things might feel horrible right now, and what else is happening? What other things are going that are kind of okay, or even just neutral? Because there is more to your life than just this negative, horrible thing. A lot of times I talk to clients about, you know, when you look at a mural on, you know, or a picture of some kind, and when you're looking at the negative stuff, it's like you're, you know, kind of like looking at the picture through like a little, you know, telescope here. You can only really focus on one piece, right? It's hard to focus on the big picture. So what I think gratitude does is it helps open our viewpoint to see a little bit more of everything, right? So I do this in a way that's not negating the negative. So that's very, very important to not negate the negative stuff that is happening to clients, because that's just the reality. You know, we have stress in life. It's just to help them be reminded that, like, hey, there's also some okay things going on. So how do we find some of those okay? So the practice that I do, basically, is I have a client kind of tell me, all right, so all this stuff is happening to you in this negative way. What else is happening in your life that's okay? Like, what is, like, did you get any, like, nice comments from, like, a friend over the past day or the past week? Or what about, like, somebody, like, say something just nice to you, or somebody, like, you know, you're driving, somebody let you in? Like, what's one thing that's kind of positive that you've, you know, seen over the past day or past week? Sometimes clients have a really hard time with that, and I get that. So then I stop and I say, like, okay, it's hard to identify something in your past week. What about just in this moment? What is something in this moment that you could be grateful for? Could it be a nice quiet space? Could it be that we're just sitting inside instead of outside in the elements? You know? Could it be something that we could just focus on and choose to kind of identify that, like, you know what? This is okay. And then what I have the clients do is to identify, what would life be like without that? You know, if we weren't able to sit in a quiet space and we're always just in that chaotic, loud environment all the time, what would that be like? Or if you didn't have like certain people in your life, what would that be? And then I ask them to just kind of sit in the gratitude and say, like, yeah, actually, that's a pretty nice thing that I have, even if it's little. And so sometimes I have clients do that a couple of different times just to kind of like build up the practice, because I find that when they practice a little bit more of that, it's a little bit easier for them to then go there on their own later on
And then oftentimes I'm also seeing it in the certain. So they're like leaving the therapy sessions feeling a little bit better about things. Gratitude, very, very important. So mindfulness can be very useful for many people, both in therapy and outside of it. I use a lot of like mindfulness techniques myself, especially the calming and grounding type of techniques, like having an anchor of breathing, like all that kind of through, right? A lot of times when I have difficult client sessions, meaning like a client comes in with a lot of trauma, or a client's coming in and having just like a really, really rough time, there's a lot of emotions there. And sometimes like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, okay, so like what might happen in this session? Well, sometimes that's not useful, right? Because that can increase my stress, and then like when I'm more stressed, I'm not as present in therapy. So sometimes I have to use those techniques for myself. So just sitting, calming my body down. And what I really like to do is just like close my eyes and listen. I just listen to noises. And I listen to noises with no judgments, because I'm not like trying to judge the noises that are happening. I'm just trying to notice them and see like, oh, I hear this and I hear that. And what that does, and it seems very simple, but what that does is it just gives me freedom just to kind of sit and let go. And then it gives me a sense of grounding or a sense of calm. So mindfulness, in like the majority of it that I find helpful in therapy, is that it helps clients and myself be more present in therapy. Just to be able to be there. So like when you are mindful and you are aware of what's going on inside of your head and inside of your body, like you can then talk about it a little bit more easily, right? So then clients can be more present. It can help clients learn how to avoid that full-blown panic attack that I talked about by using grounding techniques. It can help clients have more awareness of their thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by their thoughts and feelings, right? So for example, it can help people to identify that like, they might be having a thought that I'm going to fail that math test. But there's a very big difference between having a thought and that being fully true. Because sometimes we really believe that our thoughts are fully true. Well, sometimes thoughts are just thoughts. And sometimes when we are able to challenge them and say like, where's the evidence of that? Right? Why do I think I'm going to fail this? Or is that just an anxious thought in my head right now? And can I let it go? And can I then choose to focus on what I want to focus on? Right? So differentiating those two. And then lastly, mindfulness can help us just to have more compassion for ourselves and for others. So if we have time, I'd like to do a little bit of a loving kindness meditation with you all, if everybody would like to participate. So if you would like to, please get into a comfortable position. If you can, put things down that are in your hands, as I noticed that can be a little distracting for some. This practice is called loving kindness. It's a meditation that's helpful in building up positive emotions in yourself and then in some others as well. And when we have more positive emotions, we're less likely to be impacted by the kindness. So the aim of this meditation is to help you build positive emotions, positive feelings in yourself. And it was adapted from Rachel Green of the Emotion Intelligence Institute. So that's where I got it. I just shortened it a little bit. So go ahead, sitting in your comfortable position, and putting down anything that's distracting. Know that during this time I'm going to be guiding you with my voice, and you can use my voice as your anchor. And while you're doing this meditation, you may notice your mind drift off to other things. That's okay. That's a pretty normal thing to happen. Don't judge yourself for the drift. Just notice it, and then try to come back to the anchor. This is actually how you build up your mindfulness muscle anyways. So let's start by taking a deep breath in through our nose, and then out through our mouth. And you can close your eyes if you feel comfortable. While you continue to breathe normally, try to notice the breath coming into your body. Notice the air moving past your nose, and maybe notice your chest rising. Then notice your chest falling and the air moving outside of your body. And try to focus on that for a breath. Now I want you to place your attention on the area in the middle of your chest, right around your heart. I want you to repeat to yourself gently and softly, feeling the resonance of the words. Love, love, love. May my heart be filled with love. And as you say this, if you like, you can bring something to mind that you feel caring and loving towards. Maybe it's the image of a soft, lovable dog, or the serene look on someone's face, or the feeling of the soft fur as you pet a kitten. This image is simply to help you kickstart the feelings. If you can feel that loving kindness feeling without the need of images, you can feel free to not use that. Just try to experience this feeling of warmth and love through your whole body. Feel the sense of caring, healing, and soothing. And let it wash over you and through you while you gently repeat to yourself, may I be well, healthy, and strong. May I be happy. May I be at peace. Sit in that feeling for a moment and repeat that to yourself. May I be well, healthy, and strong. May I be happy. May I be at peace. Next, why don't we bring to our mind someone that you like a lot and you respect. Maybe that's a close family member. Maybe it's a close friend. Let's send them some of these feelings of warmth and caring as you wish them well. And say to yourself, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at peace. Now let's try and bring to mind someone we feel a little neutral about. So maybe this is someone who you've seen on the street, or who you've seen on the bus, but not someone you know very deeply. Let's send them some of these feelings of warmth and caring as you wish them well. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be at peace. Next, let's bring to mind someone who you got irritated with recently. Maybe not someone who has deeply hurt you, but someone you just got a little upset at. And let's try to send them these feelings of warmth and caring as you wish them well. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be at peace. And finally, we can focus once again on ourselves. So the feeling of loving kindness fills our whole being. Breathing in peacefully, breathing out peacefully, at peace with yourself and the world. And then you can slowly let the feelings of loving kindness ease and return once again to focusing on just your breathing. Noticing the breath coming into your body. Notice the air moving past your nose and exiting your body. And now try to bring your focus back to this room and return once again to noticing yourself sitting in your chair. Feel free to wiggle your toes, move your fingers around, and try to come back into the room. And when you're ready, open up your eyes. So that type of meditation is just all about giving us a little bit of compassion for ourselves and for others. Thank you.
This is really the conversation part where anybody has any thoughts or comments or questions, and or if you have a request to ask them to do any more. They have a lot of meditation tricks in their pockets with them, so they may have other ones they want to try. So are there any comments or questions anyone wants to ask?
How many of the children that you have been seeing have not required medication?
Medication? question. I would say it kind of depends on, the clients and their situation and like where parents kind of sit with it. Medication is not always my first go-to when I'm thinking about like clients dealing with, like anxiety, depression. It really just kind of depends. So it's hard to say. I would say currently more than half are probably not either interested or in need of it necessarily. And I think that that's just a piece of a bigger picture when you're thinking about, the health of a child. It's not just about, the chemistry that's happening in the body and the brain, but it's also about like, what are their habits, what are their thoughts, what's happening within the family. So it just kind of like, it depends. Sorry, it's a hard question to answer.
I work in an elementary school in first grade, and I'm curious as to how effective, I guess, particularly breathing can be on young kids. Because even as young as 6 and 7 years old, we're seeing anxiety levels that are really high.
Locally, there's the Calm Classroom, and they're doing a lot with that in the elementary, primary here. Calm Classroom.
What's that?
They do breathing, relaxation techniques, like we've talked about here, to help students in their response.
So it's a program, you mean, that you do in your classroom? Is that what you mean, Paul?
That's available here. They will come into the classroom.
Oh, so it's an
And
organization?
and they also have resources. You can go onto their website, and they have books and little cards that are really fun, helping students learn and feel this. And they suggest starting early. There's a lot going on. So just get online and Google it. You'll be amazed what you can do.
I think one of the easiest ways too for young kids, and I've tried to start this with some of my freshmen, is starting small.
Yeah.
Minutes, 2 minutes,
Yeah.
3 minutes, 4 minutes. Even in the meditation with the juniors and seniors, we didn't just jump into a 45-minute practice. Because frankly, as we all have talked about, it takes practice to become proficient at meditation. Because of the wandering mind, the monkey brain, we are constantly trying to go elsewhere instead of focus. So even at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, starting very small with a minute or 2, 3 of practice will be beneficial, because we don't immediately, for instance, for baseball, we don't teach kids immediately how to do specific advanced tasks. We start small and build up. Realistically, I'm not going to get freshman boys to sit down for 20 minutes at a time, especially on a consistent basis. If it's 1 or 2 times during the course of the semester, yeah, it might be beneficial, it might get there, but for a smaller group of kids in a lower age range, I would say start small and go with the, hey, we're going to close our eyes for a minute and we're just going to breathe. And don't even ask them to think about anything. Let them go through that, and then you can kind of come together at the end to discuss, hey, where were our minds at that point? First time I did meditation, I was trying to count to 10 and I couldn't count to 10. And the true mindfulness is being able to count to 10 without counting to 10. Knowing 10 breaths happened without actually counting to 10. So
as someone who is a novice to all of this, in every way really, the more you practice it, sort of the more effective it is for you each time. Is that?
Actually, you're changing the brain. You're rewiring the structure of the brain by increasing the neural connections in the prefrontal cortex, which enhances executive functioning, their ability to perform on tests or to do whatever they need to do, decision making. So that's why practice is important. And you just today, I'm sorry, your neural connections haven't really increased here. But after you've practiced it for a while, yes, this gets stronger. The other thing that's really exciting is the amygdala, the part of the brain that registers anxiety, fear, rage, diminishes. the neuroconnection. So, and that's one reason why it's very beneficial for anxiety. So yeah, it's profoundly beneficial. And a good time to do it would be, let's just close our eyes and put our hands on our tummy. And I use the word tummy because it's a kind word instead of abs and belly. You know, put your hands on your tummy. Let's close our eyes. Let's breathe in and out a few times. And then, boys and girls, take your pencil out and do your test. That will calm the mind. Because that's the other thing, because when we're really anxious or stressed before a test, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. So it just helps so much with our students, especially the ADD kids who are really hyperactive. Their prefrontal cortex shuts down under stress. So you wonder, well, I'm not getting to what's going on. Well, it's because they're stressed. This slows down. It doesn't work so well. So it's really, really helpful. And there's so much out there. I encourage you to get online. It just blows me away. Every day there's more information, more research, more benefits. One of my favorite websites is the Center for Greater Good out of University of Berkeley. They have tons of stuff. Also, there's another one called Happify, like happy, but instead of a Y, it's an I, happify.com. They have videos that you can show the kids. They have little animated videos that little ones can relate to. So there's a lot you can do, but basically educate yourself. You can get a lot from it. And then practice it yourself. You really can't.
Just one more question. So when we were doing that, my brain was like millions of places except for here. And so is it enough to just, at the beginning, just to say, okay, your mind like these millions of places, come back here? Like, it was hard for me to stay in it.
I think it's all about just noticing the drift, that like, because that's a very normal thing that is going to happen to every single person. And that's why I think a lot of people get up on mindfulness activities and practices in the very beginning because they feel like they're no good at it. Well, the reality is that no one is good at it in the beginning because it's our normal state to walk around with like lack of awareness and to be unmindful, right? So like the practice of just noticing that your mind drifted off and trying to come back to the anchor is literally what builds the muscle. So the more times you can do that, the more, like, the deeper the connection of the synapses that you're creating in your brain, right? So that's the practice. So it really doesn't matter if you're doing breathing, if you're doing listening to sounds, if you're using like sensations of noticing like your body. It doesn't really matter. It's just noticing when your mind drifts off and then coming back to whatever it is that you were trying to focus on. And I would say for like little kids, we have one clinician at Youth Services that works with a lot of little ones around that age. And she does a lot. She uses creativity in trying to get the kids to engage in like breathing. And so she'll say like, all right, we're going to do some of our, I think it's like dinosaur breaths or like our monster breaths, right? Where they're breathing in really deeply like a big monster and then breathe out like a really big monster, right? Just a way to kind of engage them in a creative way that they're going to do for a couple of times, but also knowing their attention span is going to be short, right? So like using your creativity. And then one last thing I wanted to mention, there's a book out there called Altered Traits, and it talks about how mindfulness changes the brain structure in our head and the difference between those yogis, the Buddhist monks, how their brains look differently from like people like in the United States. Like it just looks different because they've been doing mindfulness meditation for such a long time. So I forget who the author is, but it's a fantastic book.
There's several books. There's a lot of research done on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Altered traits.
You also have access to Calm as well.
I actually have Calm on my phone, but I'm. Yeah.
If you're a teacher and you have, I believe you just have to have your work email address attached. You have a lifetime subscription to it. That was the whole partnership that they did with.
That was interesting.
The Department of Education.
Okay, thank you.
So it's extremely beneficial because you then learn through some of the stuff that you're doing yourself.
And I just wanted to comment on what you had said too. It's mind training. We're training our mind, and it does want to run off. Like you were mentioning, monkey mind, our thoughts just jump from here to there. So I use the analogy, it's like training a puppy dog. We throw the ball out, we want the puppy to bring it back to us. And you keep bringing it back to the breath, back to the breath. The interesting thing about the mind, typically can only think one thing at a time. So if we're focused on the breath, if we're focused on a mantra, if we're focused on visualization, loving kindness, yoga nidra meditations, it brings the awareness away from the thoughts. The mind is made to think. That's what it does. When it stops thinking, we're underground. So we don't want to be anchored into those thoughts because they get us into trouble. A lot of times it's negative thinking. Our inner critic is giving us grief. But the mind keeps doing its thing, but we're bringing awareness away from it. And this is high school kids. I don't know if you can come up with an analogy for younger kids, but I say it's like driving down a busy highway. We know cars are going past us. Shh, shh, shh. Those are our thoughts. The cars are like our thoughts. We don't look into the other car, and I tease the boys, oh, is that a pretty girl? I wonder if she's dating anyone. You know, as soon as we distract ourselves and anchor into that person, we're no longer on the highway. We're no longer down our road. We're getting ourselves into trouble. So we want to bring it back to the lane. We want to keep looking straight ahead. And again, we're going to look at, oh, there's another pretty girl. Or, you know, this guy, oh, there's a pretty guy. A handsome guy. So that's what I'm saying. That's what the brain does. So don't be discouraged. Just find that you can bring it back to the breath or whatever you use as your anchor. Does that help? Yeah.
Does it go easy on the internal cattle prod? Like they talk about you constantly prod yourself because, okay, I went off my train of thought. And then you get mad at yourself, but that's counterproductive to the actual mindfulness piece. So that's one of the things that I think that was in 10% Happier. Go easy on the internal cattle prod.
Yeah, because it's going to happen.
That's good for me to hear just generally.
Yeah, just expect
Very hard on ourselves in general.
I would also say on YouTube, there's lots of videos, especially on Headspace is another app, but it's a pay app. But they have a lot of videos on YouTube, free videos that you can watch. And I use a lot of those videos with my teens just to kind of help them understand. The Monkey Mind one is on there, just to kind of help them understand like what's happening in the mind and what is our purpose here. So videos are probably really useful.
I was just noticing in the different times when we were all doing it together, and my question is about when you do this with groups. It seemed to me that the first time we did it, I heard, we were all closing our eyes, but I heard different sounds. And then by the last one, the loving kindness, there was this like collective quiet. It was really cool. And I kind of wondered, do you notice that when you lead groups, that the quality of the quietness kind of maybe changes or has character to it depending on how your group and what kind of meditation you're leading?
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends on the buy-in of the clients at times, because not everybody is like super excited to come to a DBT skills group. But oftentimes, like if they practice it, and the reason I do lots of different types of activities to help them try mindfulness, because I find that like with teenagers, they like variety, and it's harder for them to anchor to the breath, at least the group that I'm working with, and a lot of emotion dysregulation. But they have a harder time anchoring to the breath, so that's why I use sensations like feeling or the sensation of sound. But what I do notice is that when you, and even with myself, when you do it over time, you're building on your skills. It's not like you just go from like 0 to 100. You're not going to become a yogi after a week of doing this. But you're also like, if you've been doing it and practicing it for a while, and assuming there's not a big massive break in between your practices, you're going to be building on your skills. So it becomes a little bit easier to try it and do it.
I would say even with high school students, the same thing. The first time, even though it was 5 to 10 minutes, you could tell there was a different style of breathing, and you could hear that. Then toward the end, you know, if you look basically in December when we would do it, it was a much shallower breathing. You could hear the breaths going in and out, and whether that be me guiding them through meditation or through a professionally guided meditation practice, there is a different, no pun intended, calm to the room. it comes because of the practice. It's like learning to walk. You don't just immediately take one step after another. You fall, and you're going to fall. And it's just, can you get back up again? Can you get back on that track of focusing on the breath, focusing on your feet on the ground, that sensation? So yes, the answer to your question is it gets, number one, it's going to get easier, and number two, within groups, and again, you can ask yourself, it got easier as it went on through the course.
Yeah, it's the same thing too. I think group practice helps a lot. I notice a real difference when people are together. There seems to be some kind of supportive thing happening. Yeah, and then what I do, I teach a 2-hour workshop, and I teach 4 small practices. It's like breathing, and then visualization, and a short body sensing, and a longer body sensing. And these are with people who haven't meditated before often. And really, it quiets progressively throughout the time.
Maybe you see it in person.
Yeah.
You see a more relaxed, peaceful face, less twitching.
I always love it because I agree with what you were saying. Somebody needs to take a nap. I love sleep. And I have people come in and say they just can't sleep, and they'll fall asleep at the end of the workshop. They can't believe that they actually were able to get,
I've had snores.
Yeah.
Students have legitimately gone to the full sleep stage.
Too,
and one of the buddies actually will knock them just so they stop snoring. But that's the nature of it. You get better as you go through this. I wasn't great when I first started. As my family will tell you, they call me squirrel because I'm always all over the place. And so being able to control that, learning how to control it, it takes a lot of practice.
And does it change your affect in your daily life?
I would say yes. Yes. I mean, I would agree. I think, my parents are in the audience here. They would tell you that 10 years ago I was much more rigid than I am now. And that's just simply because I'm able to pull myself out of the oncoming whatever panic attack or oncoming anger or oncoming agitation, understanding that feeling of, hey, here's the blood pressure going up, here's the heart rate going up, and bring it back down.
So true emotion regulation.
Exactly. And that's essentially what it is. And from an athletic standpoint, we talk about the exercise physiology that goes on with breathing. Every time one of our baseball players steps up to the bat, they have their right foot in the box, they look at the bat, they take a deep breath, let their shoulders come up, and take a deep breath out and let their shoulders come down. And that was, we didn't create that. That was Ken Rivers' thing. But it literally took Evan Longoria, who was an all-star baseball player, from nothing when he was in college, a junior college player, to a perennial all-star. The ability to regulate your physiology. Because you can't regulate psychology until you can regulate physiology. It's just impossible to do. You have to be able to control your body. And from the standpoint of our athletes as well, it's something that we've incorporated through as many sports as possible. The ability to control your breath and to control your heart rate. A sprinter who has to do the 100-meter has to be able to do that and then control their breath. When we do sprints, we then control our breath. From a standpoint of football doubles, they don't really like any doubles, but they have learned now at the end, and if I were to tell a few of my football players, if I said control your breathing, they would repeat control your life. Right? And that's essentially the phrase I've tried to instill in them. If you can control your breathing, you can control your life, and you truly can, because you can control a lot of your sympathetic response to stress. Simply put, you're able to, in a stressful situation, and again, I go back to the example I used of the Navy SEAL sniper. They have multiple bullets being shot at them, and yet they are so calm. How? Because they regulate their physiology.
She's the biggest nerd.
Yep. And that's one of the most misunderstood nerves, too.
A lot of research is going into that as well.
It is probably the most important nerve in the body. But it's one of the most misunderstood nerves in the body.
And not often studied that about that. Because I'll ask my students, have you heard about the vagus nerve? No. You understand the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system? No. And these are just so elemental to our health and well-being. They're fascinating.
We have time for one more question or comment. You guys want like a technique on, when you're in an exam and your brain goes either panic or blank?
Fight or flight.
Do you have any, like, what do you do in the middle of it, in the AC? You guys, some of you are going to be doing the SAT on Tuesday. Oh, if they get into a panic, I don't know this, I don't know what to do. What should they do?
Connect breathing.
Breathe.
I mean, it's the easiest
Bring
way.
it here.
Low breath.
Feel it here. That helps release that anxiety. No, on the ACT test, there's going to be questions you're not going to answer. Put some in so they can judge what your range of ability is. So just know there's some that you won't be able to answer. That gives some help. But as soon as you relax mind and body,
And the awareness that, oh, this is panic.
yeah,
Like
labels.
notice.
Oh, I love what you just said. Labeling is so important. I feel stress, I feel anxiety. Once you can label it, then you're able to deal with it. For emotions, I like to suggest labeling it like the weather. I'm having a stormy day. This is a tornado day. This is a calm day. This is a sunny day. Label, but when you're in your chest, hands to tummy, breathe easy in and out of the nose. Relax the jaw. This is part of the vagus system. Relax the shoulders down and breathe.
If you notice yourself starting to breathe out of the mouth, be aware of that and switch back to the nose.
Control it easier.
Yeah, a sigh out of the mouth will reset your breath. So have a sigh. Come here. It's automatic.
Yeah, and I would say try to bring your attention to just all the sensations that are happening when you do the breath, right? Because that'll help you get yourself out of your head and just into your body, which is in the present moment. It'll help you kind of calm it down.
One of the newer, fairly new research on breathing through the nose is that the nasal system actually adds nitrogen oxide to the air as it's coming through the nose. It doesn't do that through the mouth. And the nitrogen oxide expands the ability of the lungs to bring the oxygen into the body. And so you get more relaxation that way.
Through the nose.
There's a lot of benefits.
You want a longer out breath because that's where the body relaxes, is when you do that.
Well, can we have a big round of applause for
Yay!
Andy Bronson, one of our youth commissioners, is just going to give us a few reminders.
So thank you everybody for coming to this forum on wellness. Hopefully you feel calm right now. So thank you to our panelists. I'll give a round of applause. So coming up on the docket is our next Youth Commission Forum, May 11th, right here in the library, in the Pollock Room, from 2 to 4. We hope to see you all there. Bring your friends. And please check your email. Soon we'll be sending out a survey, what you thought of the forum today, and that will help us make next month better as to what to do in the future. Anything else? Thank you so much, everybody. For listening to